Welcome back to Pivot Points. I'm your host, Dave Allen, founder of Brandpie, the brand consultancy working with businesses to deliver impact at pivotal business moments. When you take on a new leadership role in a business, the people you need to rely on must be aligned to how you're thinking. So how do you do that? This week's guest on Pivot Points is Francesca Lagerberg, Baker Tilly International's CEO. She's a leader whose experience in handling changes within a firm, as well as embracing personal change too. Francesca joins me to discuss the fusion of technology with humanity, the role of joy in being an effective leader, embracing cultural shifts, and how you find your advocates in the midst of a change program. Francesca runs an organization of 43,000 people in 141 countries. Quite a big task. The whole purpose of this podcast is to talk about pivotal moments, those moments where chief executives take decisions, big decisions that help their organization go onto the right trajectory for future years. So I'm gonna start by getting you just to introduce yourself a little bit, Francesca, and ask you about your own big pivotal moment, leaving Grant Thornton and becoming chief executive. I think the first female chief executive of a top 10 accounting firm, which is an incredible achievement. So how did that feel?
Oh, well, it's lovely to talk to you, Dave. And you was the first British female leader of a top 10 accounting firm. There may have been a woman before me, can't remember. But yeah, how did that feel? Well, the whole concept of a pivot point is a beautiful thing, because I think there are moments that you look back on in life and go, yes, that was an extraordinary shift. And for me, I'd been very happy with my previous organization. I'd worked there for a number of years. There were some fantastic people, some great clients, and a lovely, challenging and interesting job. But I had this opportunity to do something I hadn't done before, which was to be a CEO of the global part of an international network. And it's something I was very much wanted to do. And I'd always thought that opportunity might not get that chance. There aren't too many of these roles available. They don't come up very often. And this particular one with Baker Tilly opened up. And I thought, well, you know what? I reckon I've got another big job left of me. This is an opportunity I'll regret if I don't go for it. And I was honoured and privileged to get the role. But it was a massive pivot point for me, because I went from being part of the team to being someone really leading a team right at that headquarters level, where you have all the buck stops with you. You've got a board that support you, but you have to make those ultimate decisions. And it was a chance to join an organization that was really ambitious about where it wanted to be. It had exciting opportunities ahead of it. And I've been lucky enough to get a lot of experience working with similar organizations, which I thought I could bring to this role. And it's been 2.25 years, give or take, I think, since I've taken up the job. And I've loved every minute of it. It's stretching, it's challenging. There's good bits and bad bits. But on the whole, it's been one of the highlights of my career. I've got a chance to work in an organization I'm very passionate about, but also a chance to really take all that experience, all that knowledge, all those great people who've given me wonderful, wonderful experiences over the years, to take all of that and to try and bring it into this new role.
When you came into sort of Baker Tilly, you're coming in from another big accounting firm. And I've worked a lot with professional services organizations, and they all think they're not different, but they are so different. The culture, the belief sets, the way they do things, the way things get done. How did you adjust in that sort of pivotal moment where you went from a Grant Thornton way of doing things to trying to understand, how does Baker Tilly work? How is that operating? Because that's a big change.
Well, you're absolutely right that all large professional accounting organizations and networks are similar, but they're not the same. A huge piece is about the people, how they interact, how they work together, if they work together, and what that really feels like when you're in it. So for me, it was a massive learning curve because what I was used to and what I walked into were slightly different. The levers were slightly different. I knew very much how things worked in my previous place, and I was having to learn how do things work where I am now. And it wasn't always the same. The strong countries weren't always the same. The people who really had a massive impact weren't always going to be sitting in the places that you might have been used to. So you do need a little bit of time to work out how do things really work around here. But three things stood out for me. Fundamentally, professional services people tend to be extremely likable, intelligent, thoughtful. You do tend to get that right across the piece. But I was blown away with just how friendly people were in Baker Tilly, how genuinely willing they were to work with me, to help me with the things I needed guidance on and needed to understand how the network worked, but also hugely giving of their time. So that was fantastic. The second big difference was it was of a size where it was already big, but it was really getting into that next growth trajectory. And our ambition will take us so much further than where we were 2 years ago or 4 years ago. And to have that energy and excitement around growth, you could really feel it. There was a real desire for things to happen. And probably the third big piece that struck me from day one is that although Baker Tilly is a very well-known brand, there was so much more we could do to help promote what we were doing. There were so many lovely hidden gems sitting in the network that we could dial up and showcase. And I still, even now, come across things where I go, this is so fantastic. Why aren't we talking about this? So there was a great opportunity to shine a light on some of the amazing things that were already there.
And how did you sort of get yourself up to speed fast? You know, I've worked with other CEOs I've worked with, sort of, they go on tour for 30 days and there's lots of theories about the first 90 days really matter to a new CEO. And that's when you make or break your sort of position. You know, any sort of things that got you up to speed faster, enabled you to tune in to those subtle changes, those subtle differences between the two firms?
Yeah, I didn't quite do a world tour. It wasn't like a Taylor Swift extravaganza around the world. It was although having just been to see her in concert, oh wow, to have done that would have been quite something. But it was much more about going to spend time with the firms in their own area. So I wasn't going all around the world, but I was making sure I was going to the meetings where a number of people were coming together. So I was lucky enough to join just before our regional meeting season. So you could meet 30, 50 firms in one place, spend a bit of time, really listen. A huge amount of that initial period as CEO is about listening. Are you really understanding what's going on? Are your assumptions correct? You come in with lots of perhaps misconceptions, but lots of ideas of what it is going to be like. And you can really stress test those. Is that true? Is that really how it works? So that was hugely, hugely valuable. I have a great board. That is our governance process for the network. So working with the board was very important. The people on the board and how they could help showcase what's working well and what we could improve on. So that was massively important. I do always smile about the whole 90 days piece because you go, it's just plucking a number out the air, isn't it? The reality is that your first 6 months are really important about getting to truly know an organization, not leaping in too quick because you haven't quite got the information, but you're looking to do something. Sometimes you do just need to wait a bit and make sure that what you do is really going to add value. But equally, you don't want to be waiting so long that people are going, what on earth is she doing? Why hasn't she done anything? So it's always good to have a few quick wins, some low-hanging fruit, get some things done. But the big ticket pieces like evolving our strategy, making sure that we were really operating the way that we wanted to, it was important to listen before acting, to get that insight, to make sure that the things that I thought would make a difference really were going to make a difference. And there's a bit of team building that goes on as well, not only making sure that people already in the global office team that I run were able to work really well and were well connected, but bringing in a few additions to that as well to supplement what we already had. And I think the reality of all new jobs is it takes you 6 months to really get comfortable that you've got the right information, or you can get hold of the right information. And then your bigger decisions often flow from that, particularly if you've been lucky enough to come into an organization that's already working pretty well. You're not going in there to repair stuff, or it's not like you're in the middle of a fire, but it's massively important that you do the listening piece really early on and take that time.
That's brilliant. And I know when I sort of set up Brandpie 15 years ago, and I sort of gave up, 22 years at WPP and decided to sort of, I'm going to do my own company. It's now or never. I was sort of fixed with a sort of mixture of fear and self-doubt and exhilaration. And it must be the same when you're doing a big change like that. What was the sort of emotional spectrum that you were going through when you did a big change like that?
Yeah, I certainly had all of those, anticipation, fear. Have you made the right choice? You're making a big leap. Is it going to work? And the exhilaration definitely was in there. Excitement. This was an opportunity to do something that I very much wanted to do with an organization I really believed in, that I thought had the appetite to do it. And it was really, and it still is actually very exciting. There's something probably the longer I work, the more I realize how much joy plays a part in what you bring to the role. If you're very excited about what you do, if you can really bring passion to what you do, you are much better at what you do, in my view. And I think there's something vital about being if you're lucky enough to be in a position where you go, actually, this is, it might be challenging. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's frustrating. But fundamentally, it's really exciting and interesting. And you've got a sense of purpose, a sense of actually being able to bring some value to it, but also you're working with people who have that similar ambition. Then that's a joy. And you get that from time to time in roles, but the more of it you have, I think the more of it that you can bring. And I'm a huge believer in being in jobs that make you able to bring your best. And in order to do that, you've got to be passionate about what you're doing.
No, I was doing a sort of webinar and interviewing Scott Kirby a few months back, the CEO of United Airlines. And I sort of put a hypothesis to him that a good leader really only takes a few decisions each year. And, I reckon if I take 3 good decisions each year, then your firm continues on the right trajectory. And he sort of endorsed that and talked about the decisions he'd made under COVID, where he decided to purchase the biggest number of planes, set up a pilot school, and make sure all of his employees were vaccinated. 3 big decisions, but that put the organization on the right trajectory for the next 3, 4, 5 years. Do you see the role of sort of Baker Tilly as, your role is to provide that sort of guidance, mentoring, but also those pivotal moments where the CEO really has to, a bit like Keir Starmer's probably done over the last few weeks with the removal of the sort of the energy allowance for pensioners. Really tough decision going against a lot of people who don't agree with him, but might be a right decision, might be the wrong decision. Time will tell. But those big decisions and starting to figure out what is it that's going to take Baker Tilly forward.
Yeah, I think there aren't huge volumes. I think there's something very meaningful about the fact that you don't get those decisions every day. A huge amount of what you do is making sure things run smoothly, efficiently, small tweaks, which, I often talk about big dog, smaller dog decisions. Big dog decisions are the ones we're talking about. Smaller dog decisions are the little ones you take every day. They're the ones that continually help you to grow. And sometimes it's that accumulation of smaller dog decisions that actually become a big dog decision. So consistency about what you do, making sure that you're honoring the values that you have as an organization. And there's small improvements to actually put that together. Massively important. But the big dog decisions, and the reason I always use big dog, smaller dog is I have a big dog and a smaller dog.
Loving little dog, big dog. I love that.
They're usually running around beside me. So I'm surprised they haven't leapt up to let you know they're here. But the big dog stuff, you often don't have huge numbers of those. I think that's right. Because very often decisions have almost a gradient to them. You see them coming, you prepare for them. They become less dramatic because you've been able to put things in play. But every now and again, you get a few things where someone's got to make a decision. Somebody has got to make sure that they win over everybody to make that decision possible, or win over enough people to make that decision known. And that, I think, is a job for a CEO. There's going to be many, many occasions where there's a consensus and people want to do things, but occasionally you do have to push the boat a little bit. And I think in the professional services, that might equate to, particularly in my kind of work, it might equate into somebody that you bring it into the network, someone you're encouraging to leave the network. It might be around some of the big issues that are happening in our world around consolidation. It might be around big investments where, you know what, you kind of think that you're going to be on the right trajectory, but any big investment, there's always a chance it's not going to work. And sooner or later, you have to make some of those. You have to put your voice out there and go, this is something we've got to try. We've got to give this a go. Or actually, this is the right path for us. And I think the big ones for professional services at the moment are around, what do you want to be? Do you want to be a really good player in the mid-market? That's our home turf. That's where we want to be. We're not chasing to be a lesser version of one of the big four firms who are mega, mega enormous super tankers, but we want to be extremely good in our mid-market. We also want to make sure that we're set up for the world tomorrow, not just set up for today. And the world today, we all know what that involves. It's very volatile. It's difficult. It's very mature markets that people are in. But what's the world going to look like in 2 years' time, in 3 years' time, in 5 years' time? And what are the decisions you need to be making now? And some of them aren't going to work. Some of those decisions you're going to make and they're going to be wrong. But you're doing them with good data and information, and you've got a good reason for why you're doing them. And then you fail fast and go, that didn't work. We just move on. So a huge amount of this pivotal piece is around, from time to time, there are some things that you just have to go, look, if we don't try this, we're going to get what we've always got. We know what that looks like. That might not be bad, but is that really where our ambition ends? And as an organization, we're incredibly keen to make sure that we are really helping our clients who are ambitious. And in order to do that, we need to be ambitious too. How do we get more capabilities, more depth, different service offerings? How do we make sure we take the pain away from our clients so that they don't have to worry about how we organize ourselves? They're getting the service that they deserve. So all of those things do require some bigger decision making. And it's vital that we're able to go, we've got to go for this. We've got to make this work.
Yeah. And I mean, often when you're taking those sort of big decisions, not everybody agrees with you at the outset or can see the sense of that big decision. So, I mean, the obviously the hot topic at the moment is, what do professional services do with AI, and how do they deploy it in audit, tax? How do they use it to automate some of the things you do? A lot of your people wouldn't see that necessarily as protecting them, but it's protecting the firm, and the role of the CEO is to protect the long-term interests of the firm. How do you calibrate those sorts of decisions in your mind? Because they're tough ones.
They are, and the reality is there's no right answer. So you are having to weigh up the opportunities. But let's take tech. If you aren't embracing technology, you're not going to survive as a professional service firm. It becomes your partner. It becomes something you need to use. And that's hardly new. We've been talking about this for, as long as I've been in accountancy, we've been talking about
30 odd years.
At least, isn't it? I mean, just kind of going, there's hardly a new debate. The technology's improved, but the debate's still the same. So of course you have to use that and embrace it and make sure you use it. And I really like this concept of fusion, where you've got technology and people fusing together. And you see that in its simplest form with something like the generative AI tools that are coming through, be it ChatGPT, be it Copilot, be it whatever it is. And you look at it and you go, actually, this really helps me to do some of these things. But there's a human piece in there that means that some of the more routine stuff can be done really quickly and really well. And then you add in that human knowledge, experience, thoughtfulness, tailoring it for the individual client, in our case. That means that you've got the best of all worlds. So you can take the information, but you're using professional judgment to make sure that it's correct and right, and you're assessing it. And that's only going to increase. We're going to see the technology get better and better and better. But in our professional services world at the moment, it's really sophisticated automation that you're seeing coming in, which we have absolutely talked about forever. And suddenly the technology is good enough and reasonable enough in price for people to embrace it. And that means some of those routine jobs become quicker, easier, need less people, but that frees up the time for people to do different work, more exciting work, more interesting work. And what you tend to find in our sector is you have a lot of very intelligent people. They're super smart, they're crazily bright, and you don't want to have them doing very mundane, straightforward work that actually can be done in a different way. But you do want them to have the understanding and brain power to look at that information and to make sure that they're assessing it, that it's correct, sense testing it, and also bringing the humanity piece that helps make it much more valuable. So I do think there's so many decisions that fall within that. What tech do you use? That's a cost. How do you train people? It's completely changing. What actually does your new workforce bring to the party that actually is very different from your slightly older members of your workforce? People who are coming in who've known nothing but tech all their lives bring a completely different approach and attitude towards it. So there's a lot of decision making within that. And I think there's something incredibly valuable about taking all that technology piece, but also thinking through it. It's not technology that's driving things. It's actually, what does a client really need, and how does technology enable that? It's not something being done to our profession. It's something that we're using in our profession to make us better at what we do.
And do you think the profession is going to go through its own pivotal moment? You've sold transformation sort of services to your clients for many years, but it feels like with this next wave of technology, the professional services firms actually might be going through a much more significant transformation than they've had to do in the past. And I'm finding it hard to get, the scale of change that's going to hit professional services and understand that. What's your perspective on that?
It probably is the single biggest thing that's happened to our profession ever, because it's pace. It's real pace. It's happening at a speed that, we look back at, oh goodness, I mean, Dave, I'm sure I'm older than you, but if we look back, you probably had a typing pool. Do you remember the typing pools where people actually typed up letters with carbon paper?
Yeah, Kodak had a typing pool when I joined them out of university. I think it went within 3 years when Wang technology arrived.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I first started, we used to take our little handwritten note and someone would type it up. So there's tappity, old-fashioned typewriters.
Yeah, Tipex was a big thing in those days.
We loved Tipex. Tipex was our saviour. And then you had fax machines and bits of technology that you look at now and go, oh my goodness, it's like out of an ark. It's crazy. But the pace now is so dramatic. So if you think about the chat GBT that many of us were playing with 18 months ago, 2 years ago, and then how that's morphed into new versions and how Microsoft is changing its systems. And then, you've got the latest iPhone with its own form of AI coming into it. Yeah, all these different organizations. That's pace. And that's the piece I think has really changed. It's just going quicker and quicker and quicker. And the world that I started working in, the world today, I mean, they're just completely different. But that's not going to change. It's going to speed up. So that's massive for us in our profession. And you have to be able to keep pace with your clients as well. So if your clients are doing sophisticated things and then you come in and you are operating like something out of the 1950s, they're kind of going, oh, I'm a bit concerned. You need to be operating in a way that is more reflective of the world we're in. So there's a lot about making sure you're operating effectively for your client base, but also just how can you give great value? How can people don't want to pay for things that really could be done very simply, but they do want to pay for the value that you add. So how do you showcase your value? How do you show that what you're doing is giving that value to the client? And that value might be quite a different proposition. Back in the day when you filled in a tax return and handed it to the client and they hand wrote their signature on it, they would be quite excited that you'd done this incredibly boring form and handed it to them. Now they're kind of going, yeah, whatever. Can you explain to me what it is that I should be doing this year to mean that, I can manage my taxes more effectively, that I can provide a different way of looking at my business? What's the value that you get? So that value-driven approach is really important for our profession. And it does mean that there's so many new sub-services cropping up. I mean, obviously things like cybersecurity, ESG, this vast range of new sub-service lines that are becoming a real, because there's a client need and there's a need to go and get people who can help provide them. So I think that's a massive change. And then if you look at our profession overall, and do we have the right exams? Are we training people correctly? How do we keep talent if we get the talent in? Do we get the right talent? Should we still be recruiting in the same way? Do you want university graduates or do you want people who come in from school? Do you want a completely different kind of workforce? Do you want different kinds of labour stacking? People who work annualised hours, people who work part-time, people who work some variation on a theme. Do you want them in the office? Do you not want them in the office because you haven't got enough space? All of those things, they're massive job changes, not peculiar to professional services firms, but certainly something that our sector is having to deal with. And that's all change. And that's change in a really short period of time. And there is absolutely no way that things are going to get slower. They're only going to get quicker. So that is what I see, is that a bit of volatility in the market, but also incredible change. And the reality is you're unlikely to have the perfect answer from the get-go. So you're going to have to try different things. You're going to have to evolve. You're going to have to be very agile. And that's a real shift because it's about pace, and pace that's going fast enough, but not being reckless.
No, I mean, that's you've given me more questions than I knew existed there. I mean, that was amazing. But I mean, how you answer all of those, and you've touched on it in various ways throughout the chat, taking your people with you. The culture of acceptance of change, the culture of agility, the culture of we've got to embrace this new technology, finding those advocates who can work with you, who can and shape the future. That's becoming, I mean, that's common to every CEO I think I talk to, that they're all trying to figure out how do they get their organization receptive to accelerated change. Have you sort of thoughts on that, and how do you handle that at Baker Tilly? Because if you're moving at pace and you've got this massive pivotal moment for the sector, the effort you have to put into taking people with you must be vast.
It is probably one of the most complicated things for any CEO of global network, but any CEO of any organization. Change is just hard. People don't like change. Some people say they do, but they still find it a little bit awkward. And it's the unknown. What's that going to do for me? How's my life going to change? Am I going to like it? Am I going to hate it? So change is huge, huge, huge. And change management, there's whole masses of research around how you manage change. But the biggest piece is around communication. Yeah. Are you communicating? Are you over communicating is really what you need to be doing, because you have to be telling people not just once, but usually twice, 3 times. This is what we said we're going to do. This is what we're doing. We're still doing it. And now we've actually done it. So there's a huge amount of explaining, being open about what's going on, so people don't read into a situation something that actually isn't correct. A lot of people will see dragons where there aren't dragons. But also about helping people see that where they're moving to is as clear as you can be. You can't always give that complete clarity, but a real understanding of what are the steps, what are the things you do know, and what are the things that your outcomes you're trying to get. Where is it you're really trying to head? And things will crop up that aren't quite what you expected on that journey. So then how do you communicate around that piece? The bit that is often incredibly scary is when you know change is coming, but you don't know what it's going to mean for you. So I think a huge part of the transitions that we're going through in our profession is about taking the time to explain, well, this is where we're at, this is where we want to be, these are the things that are likely to happen on that route. So it's an ongoing issue. It's not one and done. With any kind of change, it's constant repetition of the messaging and making sure that if some of it isn't very clear or it's just not landing, people go, I just don't understand, that you go back and rethink and go, well, this is what we're trying to do. This is what we're trying to achieve. But the other thing about change is that it is part of what we do. Our clients are changing all the time. Our people are hopefully they're developing their potential. So they're changing in what they can bring. And it's getting people as comfortable as you can with it. I don't think you can ever get people completely comfortable with change, but you can get people to a place of going, okay, I've sort of seen this before. I kind of know how this is going to be handled. I'm confident that it'll be handled in the best possible way. And this is actually an exciting journey. This is a journey where I can see that even though it might feel a little bit awkward or a little bit cumbersome right now, this is actually something I'm excited to be part of. And trying to get people to be part of the excitement of the journey is hugely important too.
And have you found sort of people inside Baker Tilly, you know, there are certain people who are much more adept at change and embrace change and like change, and finding those people and getting them on your team. And then there's the terrorists at the other end of the spectrum who want zero change. And, you know, they will drop bombs in the business and try and disrupt what you're trying to do. How do you find those positive change agents, and how do you deal with the people who really don't want change? Because often if you get those people who don't want change on your team, they can become your strongest advocates, but they're hard to work on.
You're absolutely right. I mean, there's a magical group of people who are very positive about change, real change agents, change catalysts, and they're wonderful to have with you and to be part of the journey. And it is a case of, it depends on what the issue is. A change catalyst in one area isn't necessarily change catalyst in another. So what are you trying to achieve? So finding them and making sure that you're alive to the fact that they've got that ability is hugely important. And sometimes it's luck. You chance upon them in some webinar, some moment of magic. Sometimes it is just that you're lucky enough to be working in a vicinity that you get to see them and get to see what they're able to do. But as you say, there's always going to be, if you describe them as a terrorist, that's quite funny. The saboteurs, the people who really are, you can see the arms are crossed. They're not interested. Whatever you're doing is going to be rubbish. And you're going to, I think the logic is sort of, it's around about 10%, isn't it? Maybe it's a little bit lower if you're lucky, but there's probably a little group and you're not going to win them over. They're not going to become raving fans of what you're doing. But are you being respectful of the fact they could have some good points to make? Are you taking on board the fact that there's some communication that they need to help them, but you're also not letting them sabotage what you're trying to do? You're having respectful conversations, but you can't stop this. This is going to happen. This is what it's going to mean for you, but you can't let them derail you if what they're doing is just being obstructive. But you're right. If you can get one of them to come over into your camp, so they're in the tent and they're making constructive conversation, but you can get them to become an advocate, that can be incredibly powerful. The classic example would be sort of a very sort of traditional, long-serving partner who's got huge credibility and deservedly so for all the things that they've done and what they bought, who can sometimes be the person in the corner who's going, oh, well, I didn't do it like this. And then they can see, because they're usually incredibly smart, I can see that there are other things that we could do. And I'm not thrilled about it, but I'm really getting a little bit more open to it. And that can be incredibly powerful because it's someone who has a lot of credibility and they're able to maybe assuage some of those people who aren't too sure about what you're doing. But it is a continual balancing act. But fundamentally, it's about making sure that your core end game stays, you're really clear about what you're trying to do. You really keep in mind, this is what we're really trying to achieve. And this is why. Because why is huge here. I'm not just doing it because it's kind of fun to do. We're doing it because it's really going to help everybody. It's going to help the business grow. It's going to help us get better. It's going to help our clients. It will help our people. And being able to articulate that message in a compelling way.
I guess my last question is around, before you joined, Baker Tilly went through its own sort of pivotal moment and had to change its whole market-facing brand, I think, because I think it was the UK company had left the group and you had to change your sort of trademark. Do you think that brand change has helped the organization actually unlock energy, unlock growth, giving it a new sense of confidence? Because your growth numbers are stellar in a tough marketplace.
They are pretty good. Double digit right around the globe.
Yeah, that's not easy.
It's no. But it's an interesting point because I think even though it was a very difficult time for the organisation, you lose a really big part of your network that has massive ripple effects and lots of things to deal with. But there's something about consistency of brand and also about brand that you are confident in and that you want to get behind. And I think pivotal moments like that also helps you assess about why you value your brand, because brand is hugely important as a rallying point, as a marker of who you are and what you stand for. And people invest a huge amount of money in their brand, and the brand becomes incredibly valuable in itself. So it's something that people become proud of. It's something that represents who you are. It's something that you want to protect to make sure you don't damage its reputation. So whether that was the sole reason that the brand became more effective, it's quite hard to gauge. But I think those moments where you're forced to take a step back and go, actually, we really need to invest more in this. We need to showcase why this matters. And when I talk to firms all around the world, and I do, I think this year I'd have spoken to pretty much all our firms at various occasions around the world, they're all really proud of the brand. They're all really proud of what it stands for. And they all feel that it gives them a market advantage to be part of something that's global and something that's recognized. So I think that moment back those years ago would definitely have been one of those pivotal moments. But I suspect there's another piece around organizations as they mature, as they get to a certain size and a certain scale. And we're now 5.2 billion. Our ambition is much, much greater than that. But we're 5.2 billion now. When you're 3 billion and 4 billion, they are staging posts in how you see yourself and how you perceive what you have. And I think those were also really pivotal moments too. That growth trajectory does make you think differently. It's kind of nice to know that you know the people on your floor, you know the people in your office, or then you know the people in your country, then in your region, and then you know people around the world. There's something about we're part of a bigger community, which I think is hugely important for a brand.
No, that's fantastic. And I'm guessing, had the British firm not left, they wouldn't have done that pivot. And yet it's worked out really well for them and helped sort of move them on, galvanize them. So even out of adversity, you can create a moment that actually takes you forward if you think it through right.
For sure.
Okay. No. There's one thing, there's a little fact I was told, and I'm not sure whether I believe it or not, that you're a keen axe throwing enthusiast.
I do axe throwing. One of the more bizarre hobbies
Really?
that I have. Yes. Yeah, I do. I have the most extraordinary, wonderful personal trainer, which is one of the things that makes me actually get up in the morning and go and do some exercise. So it's very good for my mental and physical health. And we do everything outdoors. We don't do anything indoors at all. Rain or shine, we're outside running around an obstacle course doing crazy things. And he got an axe throwing kit in, and we've been working on that. Oh my goodness, it's really hard. I didn't realize how difficult it was, but it's also a lot of fun. And again, I think that sort of plays into the things that I think really matter, making sure that you're managing your work life and you're getting outside, doing something that's healthy for your brain, that is not about sitting in an office all the time, and something that's fun. I think the more that you can have fun in what you do, and the more effective you are. So it's a really important part of your well-being.
No, that's brilliant. Well, thank you so much for what was a fascinating conversation, and really enjoyed it. And thank you for participating in Pivot Points. Awesome.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Pivot Points. If you enjoyed this episode, you can find more fascinating conversations with industry leaders in our previous episodes. You'll find us wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want to know more about Brandpie and how we deliver impact in those pivotal business moments, the moments that matter to you, head over to brandpie.com. And at the same time, check out our latest CEO report. There's lots to read and lots to learn. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.